Aaero is the most unique music game that I've ever played. The last game to gain that crown was the Beatles Rock Band on Wii, but finding a game that features the music I like is rare. Maybe that's because I've always played it on consoles, where the best music games need a peripheral of some kind in order to be relevant. Creating a video game that is mechanically satisfying and musically engaging without some way to utilize your movement sounds tough. Translating energy or rhythm to a controller is like trying to make a QuickTime event feel as though you're in the action. But Aaero, in my opinion, manages to bridge the gap. This is all the more impressive considering that Aaero is an indie game, made by a two-man team without a massive budget and unlimited time to perfect their system. So how do they do it? Aaero was created by Madfellows, an indie game studio comprising Paul Norris and Dan Horbury. They had experience with both Guitar and DJ Hero before creating their studio in 2013, so this game feeds off of their direct experience. Their website proudly proclaims that they are a purveyor of the finest video games, and after playing this one, I believe they meet that standard and have potentially cracked the controller code when it comes to making a rhythm game. In Aaero, you play as a little on-rail ship attempting to navigate levels on a beam of light following the beat of each of its musical tracks. With the left thumbstick, you guide your ship back and forth along the light as it shifts, building up your rhythm score while trying to avoid any obstacle. With the right stick, you handle enemies that appear on screen and need to hover over them before you can fire at them with the ship's weapons. Apparently you can also use the beat of the music to time the launching of the missiles, but I found this easier said than done. I just had to get the job done any way I knew how, so that meant firing rapidly. If you get off beat, or one of the enemies manages to hit you with projectiles, the music comes to a crashing halt. It's a satisfying system, but it is not easy. Managing both an increasing enemy count and staying on that beam of light can be a lot to handle, but the levels are short enough that replaying them is not a huge hassle. It takes getting used to, and for me to record any footage of this game, I found having to get back into it really difficult, and I had to relearn everything. Following the beam of light to a T provides the same kind of satisfaction you get when you hit a note just right playing Rock Band. I love how the beam of light flashes a little bit ahead of you, letting you know when sharp twists and turns are coming so that you can keep your streak going. You build up a combo and the music blares to let you know that you're doing great. The visual and audio feedback makes the effort rewarding. Aaero's gameplay is a lot like the EDM that makes up the soundtrack, energetic, tense, and addictive. Aaero boasts a fine selection of popular EDM face-melting tracks and a few lesser-known artists that I was happy to get to know. As a fan of Monster Cat releases since 2011, I was surprised and impressed to recognize some of the tracks that were chosen. If you have any love for EDM or have just played enough Rocket League, you will find yourself right at home. I only wish there were more levels and tracks to choose from. I knew I was getting into it when I started listening to the music outside of the game, and in my mind I saw my little ship dancing along to the beat. The enemy placement, obstacles, even scripted events, all are catered around the song, and I think that makes each level memorable. Between the light beam and the combat, I feel like following the light beam is the more exciting and satisfying of the two. There's nothing wrong with the combat, but it can be very frustrating, especially when hordes of enemies start appearing on screen and disrupt your rhythm. It would be like if you're playing Rock Band and all of a sudden audience members start coming on stage to throw things at you, requiring you to fend them off while still finishing the song. If there were just a few more options to the combat system, maybe if I had other weapons or other ways to dispose of the enemies, that would help. But there is a chill out mode that allows you to play with a little bit more ease, so at least I have that. Truthfully, this game has a sharp learning curve, but once you understand it, then you can just focus on conquering each level and getting that high score. They nail the presentation. Each time a song builds, the game matches the build up, and you see that on screen as any sort of drop brings with it a roller coaster of emotion with a futuristic flair. As the gameplay progresses, you enter a flow state before crescendoing into an intense final moment or a boss battle. My favorite was the fight against the giant sandworm that looks like it got lost on its way to Dune and enjoys a good rave. And a good fight scene with club music is just fun. Look at John Wick and The Batman for reference. It's the icing on the cake of an already spectacular experience. With a game that highlights strong rhythm-based mechanics and is visually appealing, they could just focus on fine-tuning those things going forward. But I have high standards for this game's sequel, which is out now by the way. So before I play it, I'm going to give my brief predictions and list of wants for where I see Aaero 2 going. Yes, we need more tracks, more boss battles, maybe tweak the combat a little bit, but there's also things that happen in the cinematics of the first game that make me wonder, what is this game about? I start questioning everything. What's going on with the apocalyptic sci-fi existence my little ship finds itself in? I don't even know what Aaero even means. Is that my ship, or where I'm from, or where I hope to go? I want to know the lore, probably the last thing that a rhythm game is concerned about. so I hope we get a little bit of backstory in the sequel, which I've held off on buying so that I can make this video. I just hope that this game has some juicy lore that exists under the surface that the developers have planned out. The setting is just too cool not to wonder about. If I was feeling greedy and this was a 20-person team instead of a 2-person team, I'd dive for some sort of procedural generation so that I could upload my own favorite tracks and then have levels based off of that. Also, if there's any physical copy or merchandise, I will be there. Even though I love this game, I can't imagine that the game itself did very well considering the market and its niche. But it is exactly the kind of game that I needed. The levels get stuck in my head, and that's a thing strictly reserved for music, not video games. But the Aaero levels have created a long-lasting imprint in my brain. It isn't perfect, but I think it utilizes music to transcend the video game medium. Music has always meant something to me because once I hear a song, it's in my head and then it goes with me wherever I go. I can play out the beats in my mind and see the music as if I'm listening to it right then and there. Video games, I love them, but I need that physical component to sit down and play on a TV to really get the most out of them. Just thinking about a game that I played and remembering it doesn't really work for me. Aaero is the best of both worlds for music and video games. I might be playing with a controller, but my senses are locked in. When I'm not playing, the songs keep the experience at the forefront of my mind and have stuck with me for years. Aaero should be getting a lot more attention than it currently does, and I'm so glad that they decided to pursue a sequel. Only 8 years after the fact, I don't know why it took so long, but having not read anything aside from a small interview with the developers, I feel like they're on the right track if they just do more of what made the first game so inspiring. In the interview I mentioned, one of them highlighted that it's a miracle that their studio is even still around, so here's hoping that the new game takes off for them. I hope that a successful game allows them to put in new content, include a deeper dive into the world, and maybe add some new mechanics to spice up the combat. To me, if I had to compare Aaero to something else, I would compare it to Portal. Like the first Portal, Aaero was experimental, with good mechanics, short but a solid foundation for more to come. I'm hoping that Aaero 2 is like Portal 2, fully realizing its mechanics and taking things to a next level. If you're interested by this game or anything that I've talked about, go out and support it. For now, I'm going to check out the next game's playlist on Spotify to see if there's any songs I recognize, and I will be purchasing the new game shortly. I appreciate your time and hope you have a good one.